Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from the MarketSite with Eric Piscini. He's the CEO of SUKU, and we're going to talk about supply chain as a service. Thank you so much for joining us at MarketSite today. Now, before we get into what SUKU is, you have extensive background in blockchain. How are you using blockchain to simplify our complex global logistics?
So I think you have different ways to look at it. One is to say we're going to improve the transparency of the supply chain by providing visibility into the different steps of all the different supply chain activities, right, from sourcing to all the way to distribution. That's one. And then two is the ability to participate in supply chain activities when you're a small or medium enterprise. Today, you don't have access to those platforms because they are too expensive, and the idea is to actually give them access to everything that they need for supply chain activities.
Why is efficient ownership transfer such an important part of the process?
Well, think about vaccines, think about food safety, think about drug safety, right? All of those activities rely on a very strong and reliable supply chain. If something breaks into that supply chain, you're going to deliver the wrong vaccine, you're going to deliver expired food, you're going to not be able to recall the food when something goes wrong. So all those traceability are extremely critical in supply chain.
So it makes each part of the process more accountable?
Yeah.
Is what it's
so more accountable, more visible, more transparent.
Now, this can impact the commodities market, of course, as you just mentioned before.
Correct.
What are all the different kinds of markets that it can impact?
Well, think about supply chain. It's $3 trillion market just in the US. So it impacts every industry in commodities, but anywhere else. And today we are working on many different industries. We are working on soybean, so one of the commodities. We are working on vaccines, I mentioned earlier. We are working on electronics. How do you track electronic components into the supply chain? And we are working on the defense industry as well. So you have different ways to address and support new supply chain solutions with the blockchain.
Are you seeing mass adoption when it comes to blockchain technology, or is it still very early in the process?
I think you see adoption on the consumer side, not as much on the business side yet. But when I was at Deloitte, I left Deloitte 6 months ago. When I was at Deloitte, we were starting to see a significant wave of adoption from very large organizations all the way to very small organizations, because blockchain brings you very unique characteristics such as immutability, such as transparency, such as trust into the system. So adoption is getting there. It's more on the consumer side today, but it's going to happen in the business as well.
So when you were at Deloitte, you were the global head of blockchain there. Now, is SUKU, are you putting those practices into place? What does SUKU do?
So SUKU is a supply chain as a service platform based on blockchain technology.
Right.
And so what we do is we said, instead of recreating the same solution that we have today in supply chain, we're going to create a solution that is decentralized and that is open to anyone who wants to participate in supply chain, which is very new in the business world. So that's what we do. We do an open source, decentralized platform for supply chain.
So it makes it more cost effective for smaller, mid-sized companies.
More efficient, more environment friendly,
right.
more open, and more access to the different players in the industry.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us at MarketSite.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me today. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.